Hi, everyone. We're First Seed Sports. It is week 10, and we've made it through. We're over halfway in the NFL season now, and it's starting to heat up. We're getting down to those last couple weeks. The playoff race is here. We got weeks 10, 11, 12, and 13, and that's going to be the start of a lot of people's playoffs. So it's do or die time. This is the time when champions are made. Those critical waiver wire pickups are done, and you're setting your lineup is as important as ever. So that's why we're here. We're here to help you with our starts and sits of the week. So without further ado, let's get into it. Kyle, go ahead. Who do you guys your start of the week?
My start of the week is a favorite from a couple weeks ago. I had him as well. It's J.D. McKissic. He's going to go off. He went off a little bit last week with Alex Smith coming in after an injured Kyle Allen. He had 14 targets last week, which is insane. And that alone, facing the worst Detroit rushing defense in the league, who gave up 2 huge weeks to Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones, I think in the receiving game, McKissic is going to smash, and just against a bad defense, it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, I'm on board with you completely there. I think that target base is just unbelievable for him. Seeing 14 targets last week was just absolutely unprecedented for a running back. You're not really going to see a whole lot from him in the rushing game. So if you're starting him there, it's definitely got to be in a PPR format because you're not going to see the reward if you're in a standard format. 0.5 PPR maybe, but I'm still a little bit on the fence. But in a PPR format, I'm absolutely starting him in my running back slot. On top of that, I think for those of you who might play on Sleeper, he has also been rewarded with wide receiver eligibility, which is huge. So you can fit him into a flex, you can fit him into a receiver spot, you can fit him into a running back spot. Any of those three, it's going to reap your rewards. So I love the start of McKissic this week. Okay, Mike, who is your start of the week?
Real quick, I saw a quick stat the other day. Antonio Gibson has 1 third down rep all season, and I thought that was insane. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But my sit of the week or start of the week, I got Jarvis Landry this week. In his first true game without Odell Beckham, he saw 11 targets, which is very high for Jarvis. He doesn't drop a lot of passes. He's had a little bit of issues this year, but against a bad Houston defense that gives up a ton of points, especially in the past 3 to 5 weeks, I'm hammering Jarvis this week. I'm putting in him probably as a wide receiver 3 value and definitely as a flex value this week.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. He had 11 targets 2 weeks ago against the Raiders, and they face a 26th ranked fantasy points to receivers Houston defense. He's going to be a very solid start this week, and I'm putting him in my lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very high on Jarvis. There's got to be a go-to for Baker Mayfield, and it's Jarvis Landry without Odell there anymore. Okay, so for my start of the week, clearly we don't have Dante with us today, so we'll just move on without him today. But my start of the week is Robert Woods. Robert Woods plays a really exploitable Seattle defense. I believe they're either 31st or 32nd against passing offenses and against wide receivers. And not to mention, Robert Woods is just a PPR guy. That's what he's best known for. You slot him in and you don't worry every single week because he's got that really, really solid floor of getting you 6, 7, 8 receptions a week, 60, 70, 80 yards, and maybe sometimes he'll throw in that touchdown to put him up into the high 20 range, maybe even sometimes 30. So on top of all that, he's also on the field a ton. I think this season he's only had one game where he fell under 90% snap count, which is pretty insane. And that game was actually, he had 3 games that was under 90%, and they were 87, 86, and 83. So he's out there all the time. So against an exploitable defense with the Rams and in a game that's probably going to, with the Seahawks and in a game that's probably going to be a shootout, I'm all about Robert Woods this week.
Yeah, you said it best, too. Going against that Seattle defense, I mean, come on, man. I would play anybody against Seattle at this point. Mm-hmm. And also to mention, Cooper Kupp is on the injury report as of today with a wrist injury, so that's something to monitor as the week goes on. So Robert Woods, I'd hammer him this week. I'll definitely be looking at his prop bet this week, and I'm going to probably put that up for my prop bet of the week too.
Yeah, just one last point. I mean, we saw guys like John Brown and like Gabriel Davis go crazy last week against Seattle, and I mean, we haven't seen them all season long. I know John Brown's a little disrespected in the league, but like they're just making stars out of nobodies in against that Seattle secondary. So so I love the start this week. Okay, let's look at those guys who maybe we don't really want in our lineup. Kyle, who do you have?
Mark Andrews deserves to be benched. He is playing so poorly, and you know it if you own him. And I know the tight end wire, it isn't fun, but I promise you can probably find somebody better this week because they face a Patriots defense who is the absolute best against tight ends. Their best week for tight ends in PPR, or worst, I guess, is to Foster Moreau of the Las Vegas Raiders. He had a 10.5 point PPR game, and then it's George Kittle and Kelsey under him with 10. If even they can't have a good game against this Patriots defense, I don't know how a slacking Mark Andrews could have a better game.
Yeah, no way. I'm not starting Mark Andrews this week unless I absolutely have to. But I mean, he only has 3 games above 10 points this season, and one was week 1, and then against Washington and Cincinnati. But I mean, come on, man! Against Philadelphia, did nothing. Pittsburgh did nothing. Indianapolis, those two are rougher teams, but granted, he hasn't been doing anything lately, and even in PPR leagues, he's seeing 4, 5, 6 targets now, and that offense is just struggling. So I'm doing everything I can to go on the wire, get guys like Trey Bird if he's still out there. There's a lot of other guys like Kyle mentioned that I would probably go snag right now.
Okay, as you just saw, Dante joined us for a hot second there. Dante's been having some power issues today, so we're just going to give him a bye on this week. But all right, my sit of the week is actually – oh, I'm sorry. I'm skipping over Mike. I completely just lost my train of thought with Dante joining there. Go ahead, Mike. Who's your sit of the week?
I was going to say, you're sick. You must hate this guy this week. But all right, so my sit of the week, I'm going with Damien Harris. So Damien Harris had a great week last week, but this week he's facing a tough Baltimore defense that gave up just above 60 yards to Jonathan Taylor and Wilkins last week. So that Baltimore defense is known for just being tough against everything, but the Patriots offense, who barely beat the Jets last week, I'm going to fade Damien Harris this week. I mean, at best, Damien's been a flex running back if you had him. Maybe an RB2 if you were really that thin at running back. But this week, I'm looking elsewhere. I'm not playing him against Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Mike. We're seeing this Patriots offense transition towards Cam Newton being the primary running back. I think that's just the fact that we need to face at this point. And not only that, even if they weren't going to use Cam as their single starting running back, they have let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4-headed monster at this point between James White, between Sony Michel, between Rex Burkhead, and between Damien Harris. And it's just in the preseason, no one wanted any of the Patriots running backs because you have to deal with that every week. You have to decide who is going to be the guy to go off. And last week we saw it was Rex Burkhead. You know that Harris isn't going to get the third down work because James White is there. It's just a nightmare to predict. Not to mention they're going up against an incredible Baltimore defense this week. I want no part of it, so I'm with you. I'm sitting Damien Harris. Okay, and last but not least, I'll go ahead and give you guys my sit. My sit for this week is actually Matt Stafford. I'm going a little bit off the board. I usually like to look at the running backs, receivers for my starts and sits, but I'm going with the quarterback. Stafford had that weird situation with a misdiagnosis of COVID this week, and he was out of practice, and it was just kind of a bizarre start to his week. And he actually just came back and started practicing today. So that gives him only 2 practices, 2 real practices before a Saturday walkthrough to get going with the team. And I don't trust that. Washington has an incredible pass rush. He's going to see Chase Young. He's going to see, I believe, Jonathan Allen and Ryan Kerrigan. And those are just an incredible trio of pass rushers. I think they also have Deron Payne there. I'm not 100% sure. I'm just kind of trying to go off the top of my head, but that defensive line is just unbelievable. And on top of that, he might be missing some of his key targets like Kenny Golladay. We saw Marvin Jones have a great week last week, but Marvin Jones has tended to not be very consistent in the long run. So I'm sitting Matt Stafford.
Yeah, and I think this also comes down to just better options available this week. I mean, you have Jared Goff against Seattle. Who else is there? Wentz against the Giants. Roethlisberger against Cincinnati. I mean, this Washington defense is 5th in sacks or 4th in sacks on the season, and I don't think Stafford is perfect under pressure. But regardless, I think you can find better options with Stafford. And I'm totally fine sitting him this week.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing with Big Ben, though, I want to mention is that we got to be really careful with that COVID situation there again, too. And that's something to mention for you guys who might be looking to start Juju, might be looking to start Deontay, or even Eric Ebron this week, who had a nice week last week. You got to be really, really careful that if Big Ben plays, hammer them. They're in there. But if Big Ben does not play, you're probably going to want to get them out of your lineup. I cried last week when I saw Mason Rudolph go in the game. I had the Steelers as my pick'em for the week in an eliminator pool, and I was screaming at the TV when I saw Mason Rudolph in there. So I need to write Big Ben a thank you card for coming back out in the second half. So, all right, but that's all we got. Those were our 3 starts and our 3 sits. Just in a quick recap here, our starts of the week for Kyle was J.D. McKissic, Mike was Jarvis Landry, and myself was Robert Woods. And on the sit side, Kyle, you had Mark Andrews, Mike had Damien Harris, and I had Matt Stafford as the sit of the week. So, okay, fellas, that's all we got. Anything else?
Real quick, I will say, as we were talking here, I got the notification that Antonio Gibson was actually held out of practice today. So, to Kyle's start, man, if Gibson doesn't get the go, I don't know off the top of my head who else is there, but McKissic.
Peyton Barber.
Peyton Barber. There we go. Throwback to week 1 and week 2, right? When Peyton Barber was the bell cow.
Oh, man.
Gross.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we got. Those are our start sits for week 10. That's it. We'll see you next time. First Seed Sports checking out.
See ya.